So now we're going to read the articles. I'm going to read them to you, but I'm going to read some questions that you need to answer first. There are two articles. So in the middle of this video, I'm going to recommend that you pause, go to slide 10 and answer the questions that you can see there now, and then go and watch the rest of the video before you answer the questions on slide 11, which are about the second article. The second article is much more old-fashioned, so it's harder to understand, all right? But I will talk you through a few points when I've read through them. So, article number 1 is called Lowering the Voting Age. It's called Votes for 16-year-olds is a completely undemocratic idea. What you will need to answer is, does the writer agree that 16-year-olds should get the vote? How do you know? What is the writer's main point of argument? And at the end, how does the writer say that supporters of this view should feel? So, I'm going to come over to this Google Doc. It's called Week 5, Year 9, IJ, Abridged Articles Lowering the Voting Age. They're abridged because they've shortened. That's all that means, okay? So, I go to the top here, and I'm just going to read you the first article. Votes for 16-year-olds is a completely undemocratic idea. The establishment wants to use teens as a stage army against adult voters. By Brendan O'Neill, 28th of October, 2019. Have you ever noticed that everyone who thinks 16-year-olds should have the right to vote is about 48? You never see actual 16-year-olds agitating for the vote. No teen is leaping in front of the Queen's horse in protest at their disenfranchisement. Thank God. Don't do that, kids. St. Peter's Square in Manchester hasn't been swarmed by legions of Fortnite fans and Billie Eilish devotees who want ballot box power. No, the only people that you hear banging on about votes for 16s are follically challenged peers in the Lords, weathered Guardian columnists who were 16 back when Sid Vicious was still alive, and 20-something Corbynistas who still think of themselves as youths. A cynic might say that 16-year-olds' stark failure to march or fight or in any way put themselves out for their own democratic right is proof that they're a bit lazy and that they wouldn't be entirely wrong. We all remember being 16, the stroppiness, the lethargy, the ability to sleep until 3. Man, I miss that. Most 16-year-olds just aren't that interested in politics, which is fine. But the cynic would nonetheless only be half right. He'd be missing the bigger picture. Unlike working-class male suffrage or female suffrage, Votes for Kids is not a bottom-up, grassroots, real movement. On the contrary, it's a cynically engineered slogan that emanates from establishment types who really just want to use kids as a political stage army against pesky adult voters, especially on Brexit. Remainer youths versus ageing Brexiteers. That's the nauseating plan here. Votes for Children would be entirely anti-democratic. It would undermine the seriousness of the vote. It is about weakening the right to vote. Establishment figures pitting teenagers against adults in an effort to silence difficult democratic ideas. Anyone who speaks of such an elitist and ugly exercise in the same breath as the suffragettes ought to be ashamed of themselves. Okay, so suffrage and the suffragettes. Suffrage is the movement for equality and for people to get the vote. And the suffragettes were the females that were kind of activists at the time that were fighting to get the vote in the 1920s, or the 1910s and 1920s. And he is saying that argument, that kind of fight for that vote is not the same as 16-year-olds wanting the vote today. So you need to think about what's his main kind of point of argument. What is his main opinion going forward? If there are any words you don't understand, you can always look them up. Try and think about how they make sense in that sentence, okay? I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I needed to explain to you from that. Just a few references up here. Sid Vicious was a member of the Sex Pistols, and Corbynistas are people that voted for Jeremy Corbyn, who was the Labour leader in the last election. Okay, so you're going to pause the video now and you're going to go to slide 10 and answer those questions. Okay, hopefully you paused the video, went to slide 10, answered those questions. Now you've come back. I'm going to go over the questions on slide 11 and then read the more old-fashioned article. So, what do you think the article is called The First Fruits of Folly. What do you think the flapper vote is? Does Captain Reynolds think this is a good idea? Explain how you know. and how many more people will be given the right to vote. Flappers were kind of showgirls of the 1920s. If you you would have seen that in the video and answered some questions about it earlier on anyway. But not all women were flappers. Okay, so we go back to the article. Remember, this one might be a little bit more difficult to understand. So, lowering the voting age for women, First Fruits of Folly, published in the Daily Mail, the 3rd of November, 1927. Again, this is abridged. I am entirely and absolutely opposed to the flapper vote, and I consider the indiscriminate increase of franchise to be the most idiotic and ill-considered piece of legislation that has ever been proposed. Captain J. Reynolds, in a letter on his resigning his candidature for the Don Valley Division. In his letter to the Doncaster Conservatives, Captain Reynolds expresses the real sentiments of the great majority of Conservative voters. They have never been asked their opinion on the government's crazy project of giving votes to girls of 21, and the more they hear of it, the more they dislike it. The best judges, almost without exception, are convinced that votes for flappers means votes for socialists, with deadly results to the Conservative Party. Everyone knows that no pledge to enfranchise flappers was given by the government at the last general election. The municipal elections, at which the Socialists have secured huge gains, mainly at the cost of Conservatives, supply fresh evidence that voters are still unsure. These irresponsible voters sway this way and that and are always liable to vote for those who will promise them most at the other people's expense. When such is the electoral situation, to add another 4.5 million votes to the undigested millions already on the register is to complicate all of the problems of the government and to play the socialist game. If votes are given to flappers and if the constituencies are flooded with new and inexperienced voters, men will be placed in a minority in 2/3 of the constituencies, and the socialist vote will be so largely increased that a socialist government will become inevitable. It is an open secret that socialists calculate that at least 3/4 of the new votes will be given to them, thus enabling them to sweep the country. With the help of the flappers vote, socialists believe that the total of Conservatives in the next Parliament will be reduced to such a small remnant as to paralyse the Conservative Party and deprive it for an indefinite period of all effective political influence. Okay then, so now you're going to go to slide 11 and answer these questions. And then we'll look at how to answer question 5 in a minute. These are just testing your comprehension, these questions, okay? But we're going to look at how to answer a question where we take information from both texts in a minute.